Developed and published by Bloober Team, Cronos: The New Dawn is a third-person science fiction survival horror game released September 5th, 2025. The title currently enjoys a very positive on Steam, a 4.4 out of 5 on GOG, and a 7.7 out of 10 on IMDb, with an overall Metascore of 77. Powered by a 5-liter Unreal Engine, the game is not without its flaws, including some very well-documented traversal stutter as well as some rather choppy cutscenes. There are several mods available that attempt to reduce the stutter, though I couldn't find one that made much of a difference. No mod can truly fix a game, and each player's mileage will certainly vary. I found the stuttering to be at its worst just after launching the game, with a noticeable improvement in performance following closely behind. While the stutter never really goes away, the game seems to need to warm up, so to speak, and after a few minutes of running around, it does become mostly playable. I found the best experience for me was using the DLSS Ultra Performance preset, disabling ray tracing, chromatic aberration, and motion blur while limiting the game to 60 frames per second. I still experienced an inexcusable amount of traversal stutter, but again, if I'm being honest, the game was mostly playable. As far as mods are concerned, I opted to turn off the fog and use a more feminine character model. I almost exclusively prefer to experience a game for the first time as the developer intended, and this one is no exception. The mods I did employ were used on my second and third plays, though I honestly wish I had just installed them from the beginning. Aside from the performance issues, which should not be overlooked, Cronos is an objectively solid title, and I'll start by stating that I did enjoy the game. And while I will try to present an unbiased review in spite of that fact, it does have to come with a disclaimer, however, that everything this game does well is undermined and overshadowed by piss-poor optimization and janky performance. Directed by Wojciech Pajko and Jacek Zemba, Cronos stars Kelly Burke in the lead role as the Traveler, alongside Alan Turkington as the Warden and Yashmina Polek as Veronica. Something we'll come back to later in more detail is the fact that Cronos is a very story-driven game, a story I'd rather not spoil for those that haven't played through it. For now, it's sufficient to say that the Traveler's mission is to locate her predecessor and recover an important relic. From there, players are subjected to a somewhat thought-provoking philosophical drama where less is more, and in this case, I certainly think that works. Whether or not the story is any good is of course completely subjective, and I think it's quite obvious by now that I did very much enjoy it. I'm a sucker for science fiction, and even more so when it's 1980s inspired. Objectively, the production is fairly well executed, as Cronos launches with a strong opening sequence, drawing the player into a strange and mysterious world, a world that is well designed, easy to navigate, and wonderful to look at. Which is why I stated earlier that I wish I had just turned off the fog from the very beginning. Much of the environment is so completely invisible to the player, it's almost unbelievable that the team would choose to hide it. I thought the graphics were excellent, as they're right where I like them to be, somewhat realistic, but with that unmistakable video game vibe, and they're even better when we can see them. The controls are familiar and intuitive, or at least they will be to fans of third-person survival horror, and the audio is absolutely fantastic. In addition to some very solid voice acting, everything from simple sound effects to the title's incredible score is nearly perfect. Having said that, Cronos is a breath of fresh air as far as the gameplay is concerned, as it doesn't rely on annoying tropes. While ND3576 does come equipped with a rather cool flashlight, the game doesn't lean on darkness, nor does it employ silly jump scares. Don't get me wrong, the world is dark and there are jump scares. I just felt like they were both done very well in this case. The first time a cat does jump out, it feels exactly like what it is, a nod to the 1980s. The second time it happens, the player realizes it's probably a good idea to follow the cat. Rather than relying on cheap tricks, Cronos does a good job of building tension in other ways, utilizing sound design and world building. The team did an excellent job of not only inducing paranoia as the player becomes suspicious of their immediate surroundings, but also with regard to future settings. On more than one occasion, I found myself a little nervous about entering a somewhat infamous area of the game, such as the Steelworks or the dreaded hospital in Section A0. There's something to be said for knowing a place by reputation only before actually being forced to visit that location. And more often than not, you won't need a key to get in when you get there. Cronos rarely tasks the player with finding a key, though I suppose passcodes and security cards are essentially the same thing, but I appreciate the effort. Bloober Team also opted to break up the monotony with the inclusion of some light puzzling, time manipulation, and a few dangerous side objectives to open those pesky locked doors. What impressed me the most about Cronos was its ability to blend story and gameplay so seamlessly. The Traveler's mission evolves throughout the course of the story, and her objectives change accordingly, resulting in some unexpected but much appreciated variety. Of course, Cronos is not the first game to do this, nor is it the first game to do it well, but I thought it was worth mentioning that I was pleasantly surprised by the presentation and execution. The only thing I had a problem with there was the runtime. I felt like the game was a little long-winded at 12 hours, but I suppose some players will think that's too short. After all, Cronos does incorporate some role-playing mechanics such as dialogue options, inventory management, and equipment upgrades. At the start of the game, players are unleashed wearing only a temporal shell, armed with nothing more than a pistol. It's a futuristic pistol, to be sure, and even though it's capable of firing a charged shot, it's still just a pistol. And with no more than 6 bullets in her inventory, the Traveler is set to task. From there, players will have to collect items, manage a limited inventory, and craft essentials as they fight their way across a formidable and treacherous landscape. A war-torn Poland, frozen in the 1980s by a great and terrible pandemic. Collecting energy and cores will afford players an opportunity to upgrade the Traveler's equipment at designated locations. These locations also allow players to store certain items in a container for when they are needed, or in some cases when they are no longer needed. Inventory management is front and center in Cronos, and along with the upgrades, it's the key to successfully completing the campaign. This doesn't mean trial and error is necessary for players to make progress. The New Dawn is a punishing environment, but well-equipped and well-prepared Travelers can expect a solid performance. Being a run-and-gun hothead, I was awarded a C for my efforts the first time through, completing the game in just over 13 hours after dying an embarrassing 83 times, but I wouldn't change it for the world. I had fun. Cronos isn't all sunshine and rainbows, though. As mentioned earlier, it's not without its flaws, and that doesn't just apply to the Unreal Engine or the game's technical issues. The options menu is pretty bad. It has the basics, but I would prefer it to have a lot more options. For instance, the option to turn off that incessant fog would have been nice, but it also lacks other desirable options, including lumen settings, film grain, and some better image sharpening, to name a few. New players will notice a conspicuous lack of difficulty settings in the beginning. However, after completing the game on default normal, players will unlock New Game Plus, as well as a hard difficulty setting. For those just hoping to enjoy the story, I suppose you could use a mod for easy mode, but I didn't try any of those, so I can't say whether or not they're any good. I mean, I died 83 times, man. You're not going to do much worse than that. I made the whole thing much harder than it needed to be by largely ignoring my inventory, failing to upgrade my equipment, and charging in guns blazing all the time. And for those die-hard survival horror enthusiasts, I hate to say it, but Cronos does indeed shower the player with resources. The temporal shell can also be upgraded to include more equipment slots, as well as increase the number of items stored in those slots. There's plenty of ammunition, med packs, and crafting supplies readily available so that no Traveler is forced to face a situation they're ill-equipped to handle. Most of my deaths came from forgetting to purchase ammunition at the last pit stop. Yes, you can purchase ammo, along with crafting supplies, medkits, and other helpful items at these little kiosks located in each of the safe houses. This is a good place to save your progress, upgrade your equipment, and resupply. Do those things and I promise you will not die 83 times. Pro tip, kill it with fire. These things hate fire. Remember to burn the bodies and use fire in every creative way the game allows. My second playthrough was much easier. It was also a lot more enjoyable as I got to experience the story slightly faster. And not because of New Game Plus either. I didn't do that until my third playthrough because that's how you get the good ending of the game. So there is some replay value here, but I wouldn't attribute that to upgrades or any sort of character build. That's not what Cronos is about. You can certainly try different setups, but it's only a matter of personal preference. The weapons upgrades upgrades are all pretty basic, increasing things such as damage, number of rounds in a clip, charging speed, and stability. Cronos suffers from a severe case of reticle sway, so increasing the stability of the weapon can help if one finds that sort of thing annoying. Certain upgrades come in the form of attachments found throughout the world, usually by way of exploring, but not always. These items simply attach to the weapon, either altering its function in some way or functioning separately as a standalone device. For example, one attachment for the pistol tracks enemy health. A healthy enemy will show green on the device, orange when they are weakening, and red just before they're about to die. Tracking these items down isn't too terribly difficult, and I didn't find it to be overly time-consuming either. I'm not sure it's entirely necessary, but the process is relatively painless if you're into that stuff. Along those same lines, players can also track down cats. Whenever a cat can be heard crying, players need only locate the animal and interact with it for a drop. These drops include medkits, upgrade cores, keys, that sort of thing. I suppose figuring out how many cats and attachments are available and collecting them all can also add some replay value for those that may have missed one or two. Once a cat has been collected, the traveler goes full crazy cat lady, storing them in her apartment, where players are free to visit them whenever they're in the neighborhood. Of course, the game also features the obligatory notes, newspaper articles, and audio logs for those that like to completely geek out on the lore. Honestly, there is a lot to like here, and I did enjoy the game, but I would have enjoyed it a lot more sans the performance problems. As far as overall value, I would say this game is not worth $60. If the developer actually took the time to fix the technical issues, it might be worth paying full price, but as it stands, the game is broken, and Bloober Team has shown no desire to fix it. I would definitely recommend borrowing a copy from a friend or waiting for a sale. As always, if you made it this far, happy gaming, and thanks for watching.